there are 15 to 20 million Americans that have been formally diagnosed with alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them, which tells you how dramatically underreported that
Yes.
actually is.
Happy Sober Day, friends. Welcome to the Sobriety Diaries. My name is Nate. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic 7 years from my last drink. The Sobriety Diaries is a video podcast where we share powerful stories of recovery told by those who lived them. Check us out at thesobrietydiaries.com for all things podcast related. And for all our video interviews, head over to youtube.com/Nate Kelly. Also, please share this podcast with just one person in your life who may still be struggling. You just never know what they may need to hear today. Recovery is possible. Let's open the diary on the fabulous, the juicy Kay Allison. I am here with my new friend, Kay Allison. Kay, what a breath of fresh air, a ray of sunshine, if you will. How are you, my friend?
I am fantastic today. And yes, I am awash in bright pink and bright red.
Yes, so if you're not watching us on YouTube, you can head over there at youtube.com/Nate Kelly. All the episodes of the podcast are up. Kay brought her A game today with the pink and the glasses. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah, these have become my trademark since the beginning of Zoom.
I love it. Yeah, it's something that we all had to either get on board with and adjust to quickly or kind of be left in the dust, right?
Yeah, very true.
So, Kay, I know you're very active in the recovery community. So what prompted you to take that leap and recover out loud?
When I was new in recovery, I walked into a meeting, and there at the front of the room was this absolutely gorgeous woman. She was well dressed, she was articulate, she had it together, and she was telling her story. And she said, well, it was 3 a.m. I was in my living room with my husband, my boyfriend, and the police. And I thought that was perfectly normal. And she threw back this glorious mane of auburn curls and laughed. And Nate, at that point, my light was so buried under shame and remorse and regret and embarrassment and denial, all topped off with a nothing to see here, ma'am, pass on by, that I remember being viscerally shocked. And yet I so wanted what she embodied, which to me was freedom and hope and just that sparkling sense of being alive. And that's what I want to do for other women. I want to be that beacon of hope and of light and of sparkle and of possibility. Because when I got sober, I thought my life was going to suck.
Yes.
I thought it was going to be gray and dark, and I was going to be going to the library on Friday nights for fun.
Right.
And gosh, I just want to be this beacon of aliveness that's really possible once we get free from the alcohol.
I almost see it as not an obligation, but if we have the voice and we are comfortable sharing our story and we have a platform to do so, who are we not to share that? And I had several experiences in early recovery, as you are describing, where I was just really in awe of the folks speaking at meetings and the things that they were sharing. They may not have been speaking my exact story, but there was a connection, and it helped me to find my voice and become confident and comfortable sharing it. One of the reasons that led to this podcast. So I love that. And we share that in common with wanting to be that sort of beacon of light and wanting to be perhaps something that, others see themselves in.
There are 15 to 20 million Americans that have been formally diagnosed with alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them, which tells you how dramatically underreported that
Yes.
actually is.
Same.
We all fudge. The doctor asks, how
Yeah.
much do you drink? And we all fudge, right?
Yes.
And we say 3 glasses of wine, but the glasses are tumblers rather than 4 ounces or whatever they're supposed to be. Of course, in AA, they don't take attendance and there isn't a master, roll of membership, but it's estimated that there's 1.5 to 2 million members of AA. I mean, that's a big gap between 2 and 20, and the
Right.
20 is understated. So there's a whole huge population out there that doesn't identify with being called an alcoholic, that doesn't believe in God or doesn't call it that, and who doesn't want to go into a church basement where they might see people that they know. So there is a huge population where talking about being alcohol free is actually not a taboo, and where it actually is, it's just really needed.
We place so many labels on people and things, and we feel the need to classify and put people into categories or boxes. And I have a good friend, Blair, who's been on the podcast and writes for a lot of publications regarding her sobriety, and it she classifies herself simply as that, alcohol free. I decided that alcohol wasn't working for me in my life, so I decided to remove it. Therefore, I'm alcohol free. She doesn't necessarily identify as an alcoholic, or to your point, has not been diagnosed with alcohol use disorder. So there are these different categories, for lack of a better word, where how can we just come together as a community of those who do not need or use or want alcohol in our lives?
I do not identify with being an alcoholic. I mean, it doesn't serve, I don't think that term does anybody any good. So I also say that I'm free from alcohol, I'm
Yeah,
alcohol free. And I find that that is a more inviting way to talk about not drinking for a lot of people that are put off by the label
I agree.
alcoholic.
I
Yeah.
agree. Well, let's talk about your journey a bit. When was your last drink, and what led up to that day in particular?
My last drink was on August 8th of 1999. So my sobriety date is 8/9/99. Yeah,
Ooh,
it's been a little bit. It's
I
been
love that.
it's been a little while.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Not quite to the point where I've been sober as long as I was drinking, but give me a couple years and then
yeah.
I'm here.
Come back then. We'll talk.
Okay.
We'll
All
talk
right,
then
Nate.
too.
All right. Um, had become adjusted to the fact that once I started drinking, I really didn't know what was going to happen. And I'd kind of worked my life around that. I moved out of the suburbs and downtown Chicago so that I could take a cab. We didn't have Uber and
Yeah.
Lyft then, boys and girls. So I could take a cab home rather than driving drunk up the highway. And so I had become kind of okay with that, and planned my world around that. And I knew that my drinking wasn't working all that well. There were like little breadcrumbs, like Hansel and Gretel, kind of
Sure.
from the beginning of 1999. I actually went to my first meeting in February of 99, and the people freaked me out. As I recall, and I'm sure this is not what happened, but as I recall, this woman that held my hand in the circle afterwards looked up at me and said, "Nobody walks through these doors by mistake." Oh, here's what really happened. I was a single parent. I was a senior vice president in a global ad agency. I was a single parent. I had 2 kids that were then, I think, 9 and 15. And I was turning 40. I was turning 40 on Tuesday. So, of course, I threw the party on Saturday, the Saturday before.
And the Saturday after, I'm sure you planned, but
And so I threw this really grandiose party that I could not afford. And I had people in, I had probably 40 people come in. And I remember saying, I am going to show up and be present tonight because I have all these dear friends coming in and I'm going to drink Diet Coke. And the little guy with the champagne on the silver tray came
ooh,
around one too many times,
it's
Nate.
his fault. Damn it.
It's his fault. If he had just left me alone, I would have been fine.
Right.
But I remember thinking, oh gosh, one glass of wine at 10:30 isn't going to hurt. And then my children had to undress me and put me to bed.
Wow.
And I was done. I mean, I didn't flip a car. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't end up in prison. All of this stuff has happened to people that I know and love. That wasn't my story. I had skipped past many a moral line
Yeah.
before that point, believe me. And I just kept resetting where the moral line was. But having my children see me in that state of being out of my mind was unacceptable, just unacceptable. And the switch flipped. Well, actually, it didn't. So that was Sunday morning. So I woke up with remorse, shame, regret, embarrassment. Oh,
Yes.
and a little bit of clarity. So I knew I had to
Oh.
quit. And, but I thought, oh, it's Sunday. AA is closed, you know?
Business hours only.
Yes. So I went to my first meeting on Monday.
I started in the rooms of 12-step program as well. So I know that there are things that we practice and do, but internally, what was it that you sort of had to hold on to?
So here's what I've learned that drinking as few as 7 drinks a week regularly rewires our neural circuits. And so, baseline, we are more anxious when we drink
Mm,
after we, right? So it takes the
for
edge
sure.
off. Sure,
Yeah.
that's why we all drink, right? Takes the edge off. But long term, drinking actually increases our anxiety. So if you
Definitely.
drink every Wednesday night, your neural circuitry is rewired to be baseline more anxious and baseline more impulsive, and not just when you're drinking impulsive. Like you say the off the cuff thing
Right.
to the boss or the client or the in-law or whatever, that you go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And then, oh, you need a drink to take that edge off, right? So it's this insidious cycle. And what I've learned is that those first 30 days, 60 days are really hard. They're much harder than it becomes once your brain straightens out. I am a very disciplined person. I was a professional musician, um, and I learned how to be disciplined.
Yeah.
I'm a really creative person, but I'm also a very disciplined person. And that line that I crossed was not okay. Like, being a good mom is so foundational to my sense of self that there was no way I was going back. Was it weird? Was it uncomfortable? Was I anxious? Was my eating disorder rearing its ugly head? Yes, to all of those things. I can have a backbone of steel. I was not going to go back. I also, and I do this now too. I say to women, if it's not better AF, alcohol free, if it's
Yeah.
not better AF, why bother? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this my all for 60 days. And if it's not better, why bother?
I've had a few conversations recently about that transition of addictions or how they may blur the line a bit. Does one play off of the other in your circumstance, or was it recovery from one versus the next? Or I'm just curious if you would share your experience with that as well.
Well, when I was drinking, my idea of a good time was to go out with somebody else's husband, drink myself to death, eat five desserts, go and throw up, and then go home and have sex with them. So,
Sounds
I was
like
a
a good
good
night.
time girl.
Right.
So what happened for me was I put down the drink and my bulimia just really got bad. And Nate, what I found is that, look, I like to get numb for two reasons primarily. Number one, there was an edge that I had to take off. And number two, I am so intuitive and so clairvoyant that I pick up on everybody else's vibe and I can't tell what's mine, what's yours. I used to not be able to. I didn't know how to clear other people's stuff out. I didn't know how to turn it off. And both of those things made me so uncomfortable in my skin that I had to get numb.
Mm.
And what I've found is once I learn how to be comfortable in my own skin, how to regulate my nervous system, how to turn off my psychic satellite, as my kids call it, and how to live from spiritual principles rather than being run by fear, then I don't have an edge that needs to be taken off by whatever it is, drinking, eating sugar,
Yeah.
whatever. And so that's been the key to my long-term sobriety, has been really learning how to live in a way where I'm stepping through my circle of fear and I'm living in flow.
That's powerful because getting to a point where there isn't that edge that you have to take off. That's so powerful. That hit me because I remember trying to fall asleep at night when I was still drinking, and just this overwhelming sense of anxiety and just that feeling in your stomach and your nerves just tingling and on 100 on the scale. And now with some tools and some things that I do regularly, meditation and breathing exercises and other things that supplement my recovery, I can live without that edge. And it is something worth it is priceless, and I wouldn't give it up for anything.